Captain Chen's office was unlike any command center Zalthek had ever seen. The walls were lined with tactical displays showing real-time data from sensors throughout the system. But what drew his attention were the weapons mounted in glass cases around the room. These weren't ceremonial pieces or trophies. They were working tools, each one bearing the scars of extensive combat use. "Sit," Chen commanded, gesturing to chairs that had been hastily brought in to accommodate the rescued survivors. "I need to understand exactly what happened on your station before the swarm arrived." Zalthek lowered himself into the chair, struggling slightly with the higher gravity aboard the human ship. "Captain, with respect, shouldn't we focus on evacuating the system? The swarm has never been defeated in direct combat. Every military engagement with them has resulted in massive casualties." Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested amusement. "Commander, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We don't evacuate from predators. We hunt them." On the main display, feeds from Kepler 7 showed human soldiers moving through the station's corridors with methodical precision. But this wasn't the careful, defensive action that most civilized militaries would employ against the swarm. The humans were advancing, pushing deeper into areas completely overrun by the creatures, clearing each section with brutal efficiency. How is this possible? Zalthek's engineering officer stared at the displays in amazement. "The swarm has overwhelmed entire battle fleets. How are your soldiers fighting them hand-to-hand and winning?" Chen activated a new display that showed a three-dimensional map of the swarm vessel attached to the mining station. Red dots indicated areas where the creatures were concentrated, while blue markers showed the positions of human forces. The blue dots were steadily pushing the red ones back, deck by deck. "The swarm is an apex predator," Chen explained. "They've evolved to be perfect killing machines in their native environment. But they've never encountered a species like humanity before." "What do you mean?" Chen gestured to another display that showed biological scans of swarm creatures, alongside similar scans of the human soldiers. "Most species in the galaxy evolved on garden worlds, planets where the environment was stable and predictable. Your people, the hegemony, the Trade Federation. You all developed intelligence as an alternative to physical prowess. You learned to use tools and technology to overcome threats rather than fighting them directly." Zalthek nodded. "This was basic evolutionary theory, taught to every schoolchild in civilized space. Humans evolved differently," Chen continued. "Earth is what we classify as a Class 12 death world. Almost everything on our planet is designed to kill and consume everything else. We didn't develop intelligence instead of physical prowess. We developed both, because anything less meant extinction." The display showed new footage from inside the swarm vessel, captured by cameras mounted on human armor. Zalthek watched in horrified fascination as human soldiers engaged swarm warriors in close combat and won. The creatures that had torn through his station's defenses like tissue paper were being systematically dismantled by warriors who seemed to understand violence on an instinctual level. "But the weapons," his communications officer protested. "Your soldiers are using technology we've never seen before." Chen smiled, and for the first time, Zalthek saw something that chilled him more than the swarm creatures ever had. It was the expression of a predator contemplating its next meal. "Human military technology isn't designed for civilized warfare," she explained. "It's designed for extinction scenarios. Every weapon, every piece of equipment, every tactical doctrine we use is based on the assumption that we're fighting for the survival of our species." On the display, a human soldier casually tossed what looked like a small metal sphere into a corridor filled with swarm creatures. The explosion that followed didn't just kill the aliens, it completely sterilized the area, leaving nothing but scorched metal behind. "That's a nanothermite grenade," Chen noted conversationally. "It burns at approximately 4,000 degrees and consumes all organic matter within a 15-meter radius. We developed it for dealing with the terraforming wars on Kepler 442b. Terraforming wars? Zalthek had never heard the term before. A long story. Chen's expression grew distant for a moment. Let's just say that humanity learned early that the galaxy isn't as peaceful as most species like to pretend. We've been preparing for threats like the swarm since we first left Earth. The tactical display chimed, and one of Chen's officers approached. "Captain, assault teams have reached the swarm vessel's central chamber. They've located what appears to be the hive mind. Excellent. Transmit the location to Orbital Strike Command. We'll finish this the traditional way." Zalthek felt a chill run down his spine. "Orbital strike? Captain, you're not going to bombard the station, are you? That facility represents billions of credits in infrastructure." Chen turned to look at him with that same predatory expression. "Commander, we're not targeting your station. We're targeting the swarm vessel." Before he could ask what she meant, the main display switched to an external view of the system. At first, Zalthek saw nothing unusual. Just the familiar sight of Kepler-7, with the massive swarm vessel attached to its hull like a parasitic growth. Then something moved at the edge of the screen. Another human ship dropped its cloaking field, revealing itself to be something that defied classification. It was larger than any vessel Zalthek had ever seen, its hull bristling with weapon systems that looked like they had been designed by engineers who understood that sometimes the only solution to a problem was overwhelming destruction. "What is that?" he whispered. "The UES Ragnarok," Chen replied. "One of our extinction-class dreadnoughts. We brought it along in case the situation required a more direct approach." Replace Ragnarok. We find the Place. The massive ship aligned itself with the swarm vessel and began to charge its primary weapons. Energy readings that appeared on the tactical display exceeded anything in the galactic databases, approaching levels that most species used for planetary bombardment. "You're going to destroy the entire swarm vessel," Zalthek said, amazement and terror warring in his voice. "Yes." Chen's tone was matter of fact. "And anything else in the immediate vicinity that poses a threat to galactic security." The weapons fired. What emerged from the dreadnought wasn't a conventional energy beam or projectile barrage. It was something that seemed to tear space itself. A weapon that operated on principles Zalthek couldn't even begin to understand. The beam struck the swarm vessel and simply erased it, leaving behind nothing but empty space and a few scattered particles that had once been a massive alien ship. The silence in the command center was absolute. "My God," whispered the communications officer. "What kind of weapon was that?" Chen checked a datapad and made a note. "Classified, but effective against biological targets with distributed nervous systems. We developed it specifically for dealing with hive mind species." Zalthek stared at the display, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The swarm vessel that had terrorized his people and resisted every conventional weapon they could bring to bear had been completely eliminated in a matter of seconds. "Captain," he said slowly, "how long have humans been preparing for this kind of warfare?" "Since we discovered we weren't alone in the universe." Chen's expression grew serious. "Commander, I'm going to share something with you that isn't widely known outside of Terran military circles. When we first achieved faster-than-light travel and began exploring nearby systems, we found evidence that we weren't the first species to face extinction-level threats. Ancient ruins, dead worlds, entire star systems, stripped of life by forces we didn't understand." She activated another display that showed a map of local space, marked with symbols that Zalthek didn't recognize. "The galaxy is far more dangerous than most civilized species realize. The swarm is just one of several threats that exist in the void between stars. There are others, worse things that make the swarm look like a minor pest problem. Most species deal with these threats by hiding, by avoiding the dangerous sectors, by pretending they don't exist. And humans? We prepare." Chen's smile was cold and utterly confident. "We study them, we develop countermeasures, and when necessary, we hunt them down and eliminate them before they can threaten civilized space." The tactical officer approached again. "Captain, sweep teams report the mining station is secure. No surviving swarm organisms detected. The facility can be restored to operational status within 72 hours. Excellent. Begin recovery operations and prepare to receive the station personnel." As Chen gave orders to her crew, Zalthek found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about the galaxy's newest members. The Terran Alliance hadn't joined the galactic community as junior partners seeking guidance from more advanced civilizations. They had arrived as something far more dangerous. Protectors who were prepared to use levels of violence that most species couldn't even imagine. "Captain," he said quietly, "when you received our distress call, how did you respond so quickly? Our sensors showed no ships in the system until you decloaked." Chen paused in her discussion with the tactical officer. "We've had assets in this sector for several weeks, Commander. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a hunting expedition. We've been tracking the swarm vessel since it entered this region of space." "You were hunting them?" "The swarm has attacked 14 different systems in the past 6 months. Each time, the galactic powers have responded with evacuation orders and defensive measures. Each time, the swarm has grown stronger and bolder." Chen's expression was grim. Humanity decided it was time to send a different kind of message. Over the next several hours, as the human recovery teams worked to restore Kepler-7 to operational status, Zalthek watched his rescuers with growing amazement and unease. These weren't the naive newcomers that galactic intelligence had reported. They were something far more sophisticated and infinitely more dangerous. The human soldiers moved through the damaged station with the efficiency of a species that had turned warfare into a science. They didn't just clear the remaining swarm organisms. They analyzed them, cataloged their weaknesses, and updated their tactical databases for future encounters. Every aspect of the operation was recorded and studied, as if the humans were preparing for an even larger conflict. When the evacuation was complete and Kepler-7 had been secured, Captain Chen called Zalthek to her office one final time. "Commander, my government has asked me to extend an offer to your people. The Vorthak Republic is welcome to join the Terran Defense Initiative, a mutual protection agreement for species who prefer a more proactive approach to galactic security." Zalthek considered the offer carefully. What would that involve? Shared intelligence about threats like the swarm, coordinated response protocols, and access to human military technology for defensive purposes. Chen paused. "In exchange, we'd ask for navigation data about the outer systems and any information you have about other potential threats in this region of space." It was a generous offer, but Zalthek sensed there was more to it than simple mutual protection. "Captain, may I ask why humanity is so concerned about these threats? Most species simply avoid the dangerous areas of space." Chen's expression grew distant. "Because avoiding threats doesn't make them disappear, Commander. It just gives them time to grow stronger. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way." She activated one final display that showed a star map extending far beyond the boundaries of civilized space. Deep in the void between galaxies, something vast and dark was marked with symbols that made Zalthek's blood run cold. "The swarm isn't the apex predator of the galaxy, Commander. It's just the beginning. There are things out there that make today's enemy look like a minor inconvenience. When they arrive, and they will arrive, the galaxy is going to need protectors who understand that sometimes survival requires becoming something more dangerous than the threats you face." As Zalthek and his crew were transferred back to their restored station, he found himself looking at the stars with new eyes. The peaceful galaxy he had known was an illusion, and humanity had just proven that they were prepared to do whatever was necessary to maintain that illusion for those who preferred to remain innocent of the true dangers that lurked in the dark. The age of hiding from monsters was over. The age of hunting them had begun. And at the forefront of that new age stood humanity, Earth's warriors, descended from a death world and ready to remind the galaxy why apex predators were something to be feared, not fought.